Greetings and salutations. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Severe Takeaways here on the SevereMMA YouTube page. I am Spencer Kite, friendly neighborhood Spencer man, joined as always by the young king in London town, Harry Powell, to discuss UFC 286, which took place on Saturday in London at the O2 Arena, headlined by Leon Edwards retaining the welterweight title with a majority decision win over Kamaru Usman. And we will just start there. We will just get right into it because this is a 15-fight card. We're going to go through everything. We're going to have some names, but we have to start with the main event because I thought this was just a tremendous performance from Leon Edwards. Sound game planning, good execution. And I think so for me going into this fight, one of the things that we heard a bunch, especially in the last couple of days and through the broadcast, was John Anik talking about this idea that when champions win a title, when a fighter wins a title, their confidence goes up 30%. They just instantly are inflated. And he finally explained it at one point, saying like, look, all the stuff that you believed about yourself for the longest time has actually now been proven. And for Leon Edwards, when I spoke to him in the couple days prior to this event, one of the things that really stood out to me, and I talked to you about it after I had the conversation with him, was like, listen, I won the title on one of my worst days. Imagine what it's going to be like when I don't fight like that. He didn't fight like that on Saturday. He retained his title. He looked like a man that had added confidence being in there with Kamaru Usman. What did you see? What did you take away from that performance?
That's a very good question. So I think the thing that really blew me away wasn't that Leon was better, technically, because what we said on the preview show, and I still stand by this, is that in the time between the second fight and now the third fight, neither of them are going to get technically any better. They may hone their skills, they may round out their games, they may change a couple things to just make themselves a little more efficient, but neither of them are making leaps or bounds in their technical proficiency.
Right.
The difference is going to be who employs the better game plan, who's the better tactician, who's the better economical fighter, and who over 5 rounds is going to be able to employ their game plan. Now, this sounds all very easy and silly and whatever, but I think that this fight is a great example of when you have the elite of the elite fighting, and you have a guy in Leon Edwards who doesn't have massive knockout power, doesn't have massive, I'm going to throw one shot and you're going to have to respect that power for the rest of the fight type power. He's not as good of an athlete as we have seen in some championship fights. But what he is just really, really smart. And he fights really, really intelligently. I think he saw going in to the third fight that he could use kicks if he set them up correctly. He had the better footwork and so employed that from minute 1, second 1. The stance switching inside the first 15, 20 seconds caused Usman some problems and made Usman believe, oh, okay, cool, we're going to have this the whole fight. And we didn't necessarily see it the whole fight. He allowed himself to grow into the fight, did Leon Edwards. There were things he did in the second round that he didn't do in the first round. There were things he did in the third round, negatively or positively, that he didn't do in the first and second. And then I think as we reached the fourth and fifth, both of them started to tire slightly. And I do feel like the third rocked Leon a touch because it took him out of his game plan. It took him out of that sort of flow, cerebral state with which Leon had managed to find himself in. But when he regrouped at the end of the third in his corner before the fourth and the fifth, it felt like he was able to manage his tiredness and was able to invest in some of the things that had gone well. It felt to me, and this is what I wrote in my notes at the fourth, is it feels like he came in with a very broad, thick, dense game plan. And as the fight went through, he just started whittling down the stuff that wasn't working. And then by the time we'd hit the fourth and the fifth, we were just seeing the stuff that worked. And we were just seeing the stuff that he'd managed to throw everything at the wall, and whatever stuck. And that, to me, that level of overarching presence in the fight, to not only be supremely focused on what's happening in front of you, but to also have an adherence to an 8-week game plan set, where you then say, that's garbage, don't bother. That's garbage, don't bother. Okay, this is working really, really well. Let's build on this. Let's build on this. Let's build on that. To be able to have that sort of awareness and control in a fight of that magnitude was the most impressive thing. And I know that that's not sexy necessarily or fancy, but that's the truth.
Yeah, one of the other pieces of it to me that really stood out was at no point, it was a close fight. Let's be clear. This was a close competitive fight. Okay, you're doing the head thing. Go. You didn't think it was competitive? You didn't think it was a close fight?
Competitive for sure. I think there were fights on this card that were closer.
Oh, certainly. But like this wasn't
a blowout.
To me, this wasn't a blowout. Yes,
No,
this to me was one of those fights where I clearly thought Leon Edwards won. I had no question in my mind watching throughout the fight that Leon Edwards had won this fight, but it was a competitive fight and it was a close fight. And there were moments, and I mean, you heard it on the broadcast. You had some people throughout the night, if you were watching on Twitter, scoring the fight for Usman, things of that nature. Knowing all of that, there was no point in that fight, in those corner moments, where Leon Edwards looked anything but present, which is a stark contrast to UFC 278, where from about the end of the second round on, he looks a little bit vacant. He looks a little bit just like checked out. Like, Jesus, this really isn't going my way. And what am I going to do? And Dave Laval had to really get into him and rally that out of him. Saturday night, even when it was tough, he was present. Even when he loses the second round on 2 of the 3 scorecards, or he loses the point in the third round, right? We talked about this with Cameron Simon a couple times now. Even when they lose that point, that can be a major factor, and certainly was a factor in David Letherby's card becoming a 47-47 for this to be a majority decision as opposed to a unanimous decision or a split decision. There's no extra panic. There's no moment of it where it starts getting a little bit jittery. And that's growth. That's understanding, okay, the things I'm doing, as you're saying, are working. So let's just continue to winnow this down to those 4 or 5 things that are working and stick with them. And it's the body kicks, and it's the teeps up the middle, and it's, as you said, the footwork and the movement. This to me was one of the more complete, maybe the overall most complete best performance of Leon Edwards' career. And we've seen some good performances. He's had some good wins, but this to me was, okay, this guy's going to continue to be a handful for people at the top of this division, because as we said going in, as Sean very well put it at a couple points on the big show and then again on the preview, he's not the best anywhere, but he's really good everywhere. And so you get a guy that can do those things. And as you said, map out a game plan that is broad and make it more narrow as the fight progresses. Doesn't matter who you stick in there with him. It's going to be a tough night for that person.
So at the end of my my 5th round notes, I wrote here, somebody like Colby or Bilal for the second time actually makes for a really interesting matchup here. Usman, due to a variety of reasons, is happy to be in this sort of pace of a fight. Methodical, shot for shot, some grappling exchanges, very happy to be in a slower type pace of fight. And that's what Leon does, right? Leon likes to slow fighters down. He likes to drag some of that essence away from them. He likes to be able to control the pace and the rhythm. There was a moment in that third when Usman starts to sit down on some shots a little bit and starts to pick up the pace a touch, where Leon looks a little flustered and looks like, okay, I've got to grab a hold of this, and I've got to do the exchange thing again, and I've got to slow this down a little. And I do wonder whether, when we look at a Colby Covington or we look at a Bilal Muhammad, and they can fight at a very high clip continuously for 25 minutes, how Leon deals with that. And one thing I will say for Leon that was the second thing that impressed me the most. The first being the adherence to the game plan and the high level focus and all that stuff. The second was that he was able to control the range so well against Usman. And I do think, and I've said this before, I do think that the Volkanovski Islam Makhachev fight has changed MMA, because we see it with Lerone Murphy, we saw it with Jai Herbert, and again, we've seen it with Leon Edwards. What happens in this fight is when the range is broken and Usman manages to get to a clinch or some form of body lock, some form of takedown, Leon doesn't even bother looking at trying to subdue the progression of Kamaru Usman on the ground. Instead, he bolts immediately to Turtle. And from Turtle, does all of his work. And I've written in my notes here, I think it's the fourth or the second, I can't remember. But you can tell that Bradley Hill, who is one of the undiscovered gems of British grappling, was in Leon's corner and was in the corner of Jake Hadley as well. He teaches at Jake Hadley's gym. You can tell that there has been a significant amount of work that has gone in this camp to forget jiu-jitsu, get to Turtle, win the inside battle, and get up.
Right.
It happened again and again and again and again for Leon. There was one moment when Leon was forced to play half guard. I think it was in the first or the second, one of the two. And Leon didn't even bother swimming for underhooks, didn't bother addressing anything that was coming in terms of his near side. Everything was cool. Let me keep my knee shield. Let me keep my knee shield. Wicked. He's trying to advance. I'm getting up to Turtle and getting out. And that's the way, right?
Yep.
Like, that is the way. And those things, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about the details of this fight, but the things that impressed me so much from an overarching perspective was, as we already talked about, the adherence to the game planning and the high level focus, the ability to adapt what skills he's using on a sixpence was super impressive. And the range management had Usman having all sorts of problems in this one.
I also think that, and this is to take nothing away from Leon Edwards, that this fight showed me a little bit of Kamaru Usman slowing down. This fight showed me a little bit of 35, lots of camps, lots of struggles over the years with surgeries, with issues with his knee, things that just pile up, right? And so I'm starting to pay even more attention to what these people tell us without directly telling us, if that makes sense. And for Kamaru Usman to repeatedly throughout the lead to this talk about all the things that these athletes go through that nobody sees, that nobody knows, leads me to believe that this was a very difficult camp for him, that this was managing some injuries, that this was probably some family stuff going on that he touched on very, very briefly. He did the Pivot podcast with Ryan Clark, Fred Taylor, and Channing Crowder leading up to this, and talked about trying to figure out getting his daughter Samira out to the event and there being some struggle with it. That's just a thing that you don't need to encounter as you're preparing to fight for a world title against a guy that sent you to the shadow realm and shattered your own personal feeling of invincibility. And then to compound that with whatever injuries, whatever, nicks and bumps and bruises that are feeling more difficult and more painful or challenging or whatever throughout. And you're 35 and you've been in, 16, 18, 25 fights, whatever it is. And you've wrestled since high school. It felt to me a little bit like this was the start of the downshift for Kamaru Usman. He said, look, I'm sticking around. I'm not going away. I'm not going anywhere. I want to be, he and I are going to meet again. I don't think they do. I think this is not that we're going to see Kamaru Usman fall off a cliff, but I think this is Kamaru Usman shifting into the former champion who hovers in the top 5, wins the right matchups, has a couple grudge match, big name fights, and starts moving on to the next phase of things. Because he just seemed that much reduced from August.
Yeah, there were moments in the fight when he lands with some power and he lands with some aggression. And it feels like Kamaru Usman in the Jorge Masvidal second fight, Kamaru Usman in the first Colby Covington fight, Kamaru Usman even in the second Colby Covington fight, just chases that down a little bit. Just puts his foot on the gas tank
There's a little bit more push. There's a little bit more, I've knocked the door open a little. I need to crash through it. Saturday was more, I've pushed the door open. Okay, come to me. Come through that door.
And I also feel like nobody used to kick against Kamaru Usman. And it was something that we talked about in all the fights leading up to this one, was why does nobody kick Kamaru Usman's legs? And the answer was because the moment people tried to kick his legs, he'd catch the kicks and take them down. That didn't happen on Saturday. Now, some of that was Leon set most of his kicks up really cleverly. Whether it was he went to hands first, whether it was that he forced Kamaru to square up, whether it was that he squared up himself, whether it was that he took an adjacent step and went to the body, whether it was a whatever. His stance switches allowed him to land loads of leg kicks that Kamaru.
I think there's something else in there too. The memory of UFC 278 is every time he throws, and they talked about it, you don't listen to comms, they talked about it throughout. Every time he goes low, every time he goes body, they say he's setting up high. And you know who else was thinking that every single time that leg came off the ground? Kamaru Usman. And so it gives him that opportunity for the others.
Maybe.
I think it creates that, again, that little quarter beat where you gotta, where's it going?
Maybe.
You never had to worry about that before.
Yeah, I don't know. But I
would love to pick his brain today. Both of them, each of them.
Yeah. I mean, this was I'd love, not today, in a week.
No, yeah.
I'd love to chat to Usman. I'd love to sit down with him and watch the fight with him. Yeah. And I'd love to say, right, what's this here? Why didn't you, or why did you, or what was going through your head here, or why did you make this decision or that decision or the next decision? But I think we have to give all of the credit to Leon Edwards for making Kamaru Usman look human, right?
Yep.
We went in, and even in the first fight, he looked great. Looked great. In the first fight, he looked really good. But in the second fight, looks great. Yeah. And just gets domed. Fine. No problem. And then comes out in this one, like you say. And I actually think it was more Leon than it was Kamaru. I know that's what you're saying too, but like, I think it was more Leon going in, and the confidence stuff that John Anik points towards. I know it's an intangible and Shawnee hates that, but even Shawnee
on the podcast was like, look, intangibles.
And there is a way that it can't be measured. But now that we look back at it, I think we can attribute some of it to Leon walks in his home country with all of his fans, 17,500 of them.
And finally they are his fans.
Right.
Somebody asked him about it at the press conference and was like, last time you were here, You walked out and people were like, meh. And then your opponent walked out and they were like, yay, Iceland. And he was like, yeah, it's really quite nice now. This is lovely. I'm sure that's a little factor.
Yeah. And then he goes out. And as we said, I think, and again, this is a very assumptive comment. I think Leon is somebody that doubts himself more than other fighters. And I think he is somebody that can have all the belief in the world that his skill set is whatever, but only believes it when the cage door's locked and it's actually working. Because I saw
I understand that.
I saw him grow into the fight. Some of the stuff that he lands in the first, you're like, oh, okay. And then it looks better in the second. The third happens, whatever. In the fourth, there was something he did in the fourth. He started to do in the fourth. It was just phenomenal. And it was, he takes a slight back step and Kamaru Usman steps in with a right hand. Leon sees it and swims his own hand inside Kamaru's shot and gets a plum clinch. From the plum clinch, he lands knees and he lands the uppercuts. There was 2 uppercuts and a big knee in the 5th. And you can tell that he's seeing it in 1 and 2, and then 3 obviously doesn't go his way, whatever. He's seeing it in 1 and 2, but it just doesn't feel like the confidence is quite there yet. And then when he gets the 4 and he's like, no, I've got this. And he throws it and he lands it and you're like, oh shit. Like he's really here now. It's moments like that tell me that he's building himself into the fight. He's building the confidence with him. Because if he wasn't, and he knew that was part of the game plan, I'm going to throw my jab, step off, Usman comes in with a right, I swim inside to a plum kitch and land my knees. We see that from round 1 first off, because that's a thing Kamaru Usman will do all night long if you want him to. And so those mini progressions in the way that things were moving, the way that he would, just even in the way he would throw the stamp kick. Before it was blade of the foot and he's sort of turning away just in case Kamaru catches it and he needs to limp leg out. As we get to the 4th and the 5th, he's just square on fucking stamping it into his knee. Like, what? Like, do something. What? What? And you're just going to take it. And it's those tiny little things. And I feel like when you're fighting somebody like Usman of Saturday night, and to everything you've just said, he'll give you that little something to come into the fight. He'll give you that little something. But as we go back and we talk about a Shimaev or a Bilal or a Colby, I'm not sure you get that. And that is going to be super interesting for me in the next one.
Well, and so we do have to go forward. So Friday morning in London, unbeknownst to most people, Colby Covington walks out and gets on the scale and makes 170 pounds dead, does his flex, does his weird fake smile thing that creeps me out every time he does it, because it really does look like your 6-year-old nephew when you tell him to smile for a picture. And then Saturday, he gets the, immediate after the fact interview with Megan O'Leary, friend of the program, who no-sells most of his ridiculousness. And he says, I'm next, and this guy's got to come and fight the real champ and all these other things. And Dana White gets to his media availability. And somebody says, so is Colby next? And Dana says, yeah, he's next, regardless of what happens next month in Miami between Gilbert Burns and Jorge Masvidal. And there doesn't seem to be a mention of Bilal Muhammad, who, oh, by the way, is undefeated in 9 straight fights and spent, 6 minutes in a cage with Leon Edwards in a fight that was ended due to an unfortunate eye poke. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing?
The thing that frustrates me the most about this is that we've just had, and this kind of sickens me a little bit, because Leon is a guy who won 103 straight fights in an incredibly difficult division to win. If you string together a 4-5 fight win streak in the 175-pound division, that's super impressive. To put 703 fights together is insanely impressive. And he gets his title shot and they bury it. They bury it.
Right. It's in Salt Lake City.
In the arse end of nowhere.
At elevation.
fuck all people are going to watch it. For UK people, it's like if Tyson Fury fights Anthony Joshua and they do it in Bristol. And you're like, what? Bristol? So all this stuff happens. He wins the title, wins it in the fashion he wins it. And then they do the rematch. They're like, all right, fine. You've twisted our arm. We'll go to London, I guess.
We usually go to London in March. We'll do your fight.
Right. And then he does it. And they chuck Colby in with nobody knowing. And that seems a bit odd because usually...
I mean, to be clear, the fighters knew. Their teams knew. Sure. But like we as the public didn't know. But
generally, that's not hidden.
No, and I can give you 3 guesses where you're only going to need one to understand why it was hidden.
I mean...
this right here. All of what has happened. Because if they announce that 3 weeks out, 6 weeks out, then Bilal Muhammad has 3 to 6 weeks to be like, really? Really? I've been calling for a fight with this MF. And he's been like, nah, no, I'm radio silent. I got a lawsuit with Masvidal on my jaw. I can't, sorry, man. And then all of a sudden he turns up and the rest of us are like, this is what we're doing.
Then he goes out and performs like he does in front of his home crowd,
right?
In front of everything. He beats one of the greatest welterweights of all time,
right?
In Kamaru Usman. And Dana comes out and doesn't even give him a moment of shine. And it's just like, yeah, whatever, Colby's next. And you're like, wait. Is it not? And, let's not do the whole tin foil hat conspiracy, whatever.
Okay.
But it really does feel like the UFC is not in any way, shape, or form invested in the Leon Edwards story. Because you don't have an individual backstory like he has. And I know he's not a massive talker. And I know he's not the most explosive.
But he's getting better.
Explosive, exciting, whatever fighter. But he's just gone out and beaten Kamaru Usman pretty decisively the first time. And in a close fight the second time. And you can't...
he's unbeaten in 12 fights.
And you can't allow him a moment of grace in his own event. It just... I hate it. I hate how immediately we have to talk about 1, what's next.
Agreed.
And 2, who's next.
Agreed.
And just allow this man, and Kamaru Usman for that fact, allow this man to revel in the work that he has put in over the last 10 to 15 years of his life to get to a point where he's headlined and defended a UFC world title in the O2 Arena.
I agree with all of that. The piece I will add on as an addendum is do yourself the favor of announcing nothing and being like, yeah, look, we've got this big fight coming up next month on pay-per-view at UFC 287 in Miami that you should really pay attention to. Because look, if either of these guys come out and have a great performance, Gilbert Burns has then won 2 straight over 2 top 15 guys. And if he smashes Masvidal the way that he smashed Neil Magny, he had Kamaru Usman on the ropes when he fought for the title and all he's done since then. And man, if Masvidal rallies and it's in Miami and he's the Miami guy and his people are behind him and he beats this guy and he gets on there and he says, hey, remember 3 years ago I served you that 3-piece in a soda? Away we go. You've deadened all of that. I didn't care that much about a Jorge Masvidal fight in the year of our Lord 2023 anyways. But you just made it impossible for me to give a rat's ass because I know neither of these guys is going forward. Because you said, Dana White, no matter what. What are you doing, man? Like, this is a layup to me. Basketball, a layup is when you're right around the net and you just hit it off the backboard. It's the easiest shot in the game. This is a chip in There's a little tap in at the net. What are you doing? You can say Colby's certainly in the mix and let him come out and do the Colby shtick thing where he, I've watched a bunch of it, sadly, in the last couple of days because I kind of have to because he's here. He actually sounds a little like more delayed and struggly than he has in the past. Like he's fumbling over his words a lot more. And like he's never been a great speaker, but at least it came out and now he's screwing up. Like he did a Little Wayne quote and he's tripping all over it in his speech with Megan, his interview with Megan, he's tripping all over his words. That's another 35 that's been through some battles, that's been through some wars, that's taken some shots, that's had his jaw broken twice in the last 4 years. This is the dude we're rolling out? The fake king of Miami?
So
I just don't get it. I don't get as you said, I don't get the urgency of planning the next one. Give us a week to enjoy Leon Edwards, to celebrate Leon Edwards. You put all the effort into showcasing him into Saturday night. It really is like that person that looks forward to whatever the event is. And then the event comes. And while it's in the midst of it, they go, yeah, this has been fine, but what are we going to do after this? And it's like, just sit here and enjoy this. Just everybody's here. We're having a great time. Can we let's have this. Let's talk in a couple of days and remember this and enjoy this. And then somewhere down the line, we'll start planning the next trip.
Yeah. So I don't have a massive emotional response in the same way that you do to Colby as a person getting the shot. Like I look at the style and why are we doing this? I can absolutely see a reason from a skill for skill. I think, as I said to you before, I think skill for skill, it's a really intriguing fight.
Sure.
But as always, there is a level of meritocracy that I would like to see adhered to, and it's not.
Yeah. My reaction is equal. I mean, it's not even equal parts. It's mostly based in what has Colby Covington done that we are letting this dude run around and carry himself like he's something right now. Beating Jorge Masvidal a year ago does nothing to me. Losing twice to Kamaru Usman. Yes, they are competitive fights. They are good fights. I just watched Leon Edwards beat Kamaru Usman twice, and I'm not doing the MMA math of it, but I want to see you, Colby, go out and do more than beat Jorge Masvidal to earn a third title shot. Especially when we have Bilal Muhammad, probably Gilbert Burns. You can see if Chimaev is around. I wouldn't even want to do Chimaev next just because the last fight was the last fight and it was what it was and all of that. And it looks like he is going to middleweight, but fine. But like, this feels like unnecessarily creating sameness at the top of this division that I always try to think of, what do we do if the worst case happens? So what do we do if the worst case, which is Colby Covington winning the title, happens? Are we doing a Leon Edwards rematch? Is Kamaru Usman suddenly being like, well, I've beaten this bastard twice. Get me in there. Masvidal is going to be chirping that he wants another crack. Then we're out at sea with a guy that is, look, we've talked about it loads. This show, preview show, every other show. He's a complete asshat, but he's a hell of a fighter. Happy to see him fight, but go beat somebody. Take that Bilal Muhammad fight. Take Shavkat Rakhmonov. Take anybody. Don't just sit around and suddenly pop up and be like, yeah, he didn't look very good. He's got to come through the real champ. You haven't won anything. Stop. Go win fights. But that doesn't matter anymore. And it's annoying. It's depressing.
Yeah.
If you had your druthers as we exit this fight, what's the fight you make for Leon Edwards?
I think it's Bilal Muhammad, right? Like
Yeah.
I thought Bilal Muhammad or Hamzat Shemaev, just because Hamzat Shemaev is just really fun, isn't he? And I think sooner or later we're going to see him with a big gold belt around his waist, and
Or at least fighting for one. Yeah.
I mean, I think if he goes to middleweight and he fights Alex Bahia, he destroys Alex Bahia. And I think if he fights Leon Edwards, that's a really competitive, interesting fight. I think if he fought Kamaru Usman last night, he probably beats him in the same way Leon
Right.
Edwards beats him. So I think sooner rather than later, and what I mean by that is inside his next 3 fights, he's either fighting for or is fighting with a gold title.
Right.
And so I'd have no problem. I mean, from a meritocracy standpoint, in the same vein, he's gone out and he's beaten people. He has gone out and beaten people. And okay, he's had to take some time off. And frankly, after that Gilbert Burns fight, he should have been taking some time off, some dramatic time off. But yeah, I got no problem with that. If they want to chuck him in there and do that, that's no problem. But Bilal is the one.
Bilal's the one. I think Chimaev is going to 85 as a home. Bilal, I mean, even if he wasn't, Bilal's the one. There's history. He's unbeaten in 9 fights. He's done everything that's been asked of him, right? He's the guy that has constantly said, okay, what's the next thing I got to do? Beat Wonderboy? Fine. Beat Vicente Luque? Fine. Take Sean Brady's 0? Great. You got to reward that at some point. Or else some of these dudes, when the contract is up, are going to be like, yeah, fuck it. I'm going to go over here where winning gets me to $1 million.
The UFC doesn't give one fuck.
I understand. This is my prediction at 8:58 a.m. on March 20th, 2023. At some point, they need to, or else enough quality people will exit and say, this isn't worth my time, that some of those competitors start getting better. Because PFL already looks better in some ways. The level of talent isn't there that on the same level. There's some good fighters, certainly, but it's a lot of people that have been in the UFC and have been cast aside or whatever the case may be. And it may not just be PFL, right? It may be various other places. At some point, all of these places are going to come calling and just do the like, are you happy here? Because here's what we can do. And there'll be people of consequence that North American audiences know. It won't be the Roberto Soldic that North American audience don't know and don't understand that that's a loss. That's you made a mistake not signing this guy, even just for the entertainment factor. Someone will be like, you know what? This isn't worth it anymore. This idea of I need to be on this stage, nah. And it'll start to hurt. That's my prediction.
Yes, I mean, we did a speaker's corner about this a long time ago.
We may have to
a year ago. And I made the prediction and Sean disagreed at the time. And I said that the UFC was slipping. And I had a feeling that this sort of thing would happen. Yeah, the UFC don't care. And I mean, let's not derail this into that. We'll talk and physique, but I mean, I think you're right. I think sooner rather than later, fighters are going to not even necessarily think this isn't worth it, because the incentive, even from a financial perspective, is probably still better in the UFC than most other organizations, because there is going to be a point, if you're PFL, let's just say, right, and you're paying reportedly Brendan Loughnane 125k a fight plus the $1 million that he then won. You can't do that many more times over, right? If Sean Brady and Bilal Muhammad and Shavkat Rakhmonov and Neil Magny and whatever say, fuck the UFC, we're coming to the PFL, they can't all have 125.
Agreed.
So there will become a point when these fighters will go and they'll look elsewhere. And the PFL is very attractive in that you're guaranteed a set number of fights in a tournament and you've got a prize. And you know that if you do the things and the fights and the stuff and the wins, you win $1 million at the end of it. That's great. I wonder with the newer era fighters, I think you're going to see it more. With the older era fighters, I think those 3 letters still mean a lot.
I think the 3 letters are always going to carry some weight. And the fact that it's on ESPN and occasionally on ABC and things of that nature are always going to carry weight. But I don't think it just has to be PFL. When PFL, Bellator, One Championship, all make advances. Not everybody has to go to PFL to chase that million. You can go to one where the division isn't as stacked. You can go to Bellator where the division isn't as stacked. And I think we're going to see more of it in the coming years. And I think it will have an impact. I think it will force the UFC to just, even if it's just have a conversation internally of how do we stem this tide a little bit? Because I think, as you said, it's going to be that young talent. And the young talent is the future. And so you can't just mortgage your future. It can't just always be, we don't care, we'll find more. Those wells eventually run dry. That's all. That's all.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's move on.
Yeah. We move on to the lightweight co-main event. Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev get into the absolute car crash of a beautiful fight that we expected. Gaethje wins a majority decision as well. 29-28 twice and 28-28 once. This was carnage. This was great. This was Fiziev coming out hot and quick. Gaethje steadying himself. There was one point in that fight that Fiziev hit Gaethje with a shot that I was like, everyone else in the world is down. And Gaethje just takes it, resets, and is like, shit, I got to get that one back, and goes and gets it back fivefold. This was bonkers. We're a day and a half removed from it as we tape this, and I still haven't put my complete thoughts together on it because it was just like, whew, good Lord. What were your thoughts?
This is a Justin Gaethje fight, isn't it? Like, I feel like
that was a big reset.
It's a big reset, yeah. Look, this is one of the wonderful arms of MMA, is when you have 2 guys that are willing to go out and put this sort of performance on the line. But when I watch it, I'm just like, this is really dumb. Like, the way that we're doing this is so stupid.
Yes.
And so I applaud these guys. I think Fiziev played right into the way that Justin Gaethje wanted him to fight. Justin Gaethje, at this point, for this type of style, is a 5-round fighter. He needs that first round to warm up a little bit and take a couple of smacks and get his arms going and whatever. And then he pulls on as the fight goes on. Rafael Fiziev really answered a big question for me, and that was the cardio. We've seen him slow down. Didn't really look to slow down at all.
Bonkers pace, big shots, fine.
Big second wind that came in that 3rd round that I was super impressed with. The problem for Fiziev is that Justin sort of said this going in. He said he's going to try to have a war with me, and I'm the best in the world at that. And he's not fucking wrong. Like, Justin, in the same way that Leon Edwards has great range control, Justin Gaethje has a complete lack of care for any range that's not the pocket.
Right.
If you're in a clinch, Fiziev was winning those exchanges. When Justin Gaethje was in kickboxing range, Fiziev was winning most of those exchanges as well. But as soon as Justin started to enter the pocket or was in the pocket, Fiziev was losing those exchanges. And that's because that is where Justin Gaethje absolutely thrives. If Fiziev had thrown 2 strikes, took a step out of the pocket, waited for Gaethje to throw anything and countered him, he would have had far more success than he did have. And that's not to say this wasn't a close fight. Really enjoyable, really fun, really, really good fight.
Gonna watch it back this afternoon, comms off, get another score. There's a couple fights on this main card I'm going to do that for.
But I just feel like if you go into a Justin Gaethje fight and you don't try to grapple once and you don't try to take any of the amazing, unbreakable strengths that Justin Gaethje has, which is I'm going to stand in the pocket and throw shots with you, and I'm going to hope that you fall down first. Justin Gaethje came out with nothing more than a red neck because he strained so much from taking shots. Fiziev looked like he'd been attacked by a wolf. It's just not the same thing, right? And, damage doesn't mean everything and whatever. But you just can't go into a Justin Gaethje fight expecting to fight fire with fire and win. It just doesn't happen very often,
So first and foremost, shout out to Jeff Batari, UFC photographer, for that image of Rafael Fiziev that everybody has seen. It is amazing. Secondly, you're 100% right. You do that, like Justin Gaethje. I don't know if it's Jedi mind trick. I don't know if it's just tapping into people's ego and having that little ability to poke at their ego enough that they're like, you know what? I'm going to beat him on his own terms. You're not. The guys that beat him are the people that go, no, I'm not doing this shit. It's Charles Oliveira, who took a couple smacks, but then was like, all right, I got to be done with this idiot. Hit him, choke him out. It's Khabib. We're not playing around up here. We're going on the canvas. And to me, the standout one, as great as those ones are, is Dustin Poirier, who for a couple rounds was like, yeah, all right, man, let's go. And then went, I can't be doing this. What I need to do is do the technical version of this, and I'll get him the hell out of here. And he did it. And I think you're 100, like if Fiziev takes elements of any of his wins prior to this, where he's not just, I'm going to just hang out in the pocket and we're going to throw them at the same time, and it's going to be rock'em sock'em robots. It's probably a much different fight.
Right.
But Gaethje has that ability to just go, come here. Come on. Let's just do this thing. People are going to love it. We're going to get extra money. Come on.
Right. And I do think there's an element to this. And I also think as I watched the fight, it felt to me like Fiziev was like, you know what? This is just fun. Let me just do this for
100%.
And I'm like, okay, cool, bro. If that's what you want to do.
Because his stock doesn't drop, right?
No, of course not. I think if anyone fights Justin Gaethje, their stock doesn't drop. Because if you're not of an absolute supreme quality of striking, and you can do
bounced quick.
You do the Dustin Poirier thing, and you can beat him technically whilst having a war with him. Grand. If you go in and do the Fiziev thing where you just stand and fucking trade with him, grand. If you go in and he tries to swarm you and press you and whatever, and you get trucked, you could turn around and be like, it's Justin Gaethje, bro. Fine.
But even then, like if you're the guy that gets trucked, right? If you're James Vick, who famously was like, this guy's the Homer Simpson of MMA. And my response at the time was like, Homer Simpson beat everybody until he got to the world champion. So truthfully, Justin Gaethje really is the Homer Simpson of MMA, and went out there and was just like, hey, James Vick, take this. Then you just go, great. You're clearly not of this level. But as you said, if you hang and you have this war, nobody came away from Saturday being like, that Fiziev guy isn't as good as I thought. He's still pretty all right. What do we do next?
Winner of Michael Chandler, Conor McGregor. That's what we do. He's calling for Dustin Poirier. I have no interest in that. I don't need this Bermuda Triangle of nothingness to continue. Like, let's break that up a touch. Now, obviously, if Michael Chandler wins and I've just elected a Bermuda Triangle, point.
Correct. Correct.
I feel like the answer is Conor McGregor. If Conor McGregor wins against Michael Chandler, the answer is Conor McGregor. Because we've just said with Rafael Fiziev, if you go in and you hang and you look good, you know you're at that supreme level. If Conor goes in and either trucks Justin Gaethje by doing the Dustin Poirier super technical war, happy to lay hands on you, whatever, fine. If And now there's a lot of caveats to that. Is McGregor going to go to 170? Is he going to stay at 155?
Let's start with, is he going to beat Michael Chandler?
Well, I mean, is that fight even going to happen?
Is that fight even going to happen?
Right. But the fight I would like to see, and the fight I wanted to see for a little while, is Conor McGregor Justin Gaethje. So if all the caveats align and he stays at 155 and whatever, if he fights Michael Chandler or not, I would like to see that fight for Justin Gaethje next.
I would certainly like to see it as well. I, like you, want to get out of the well-put Bermuda Triangle of fights. As much as I would like to see a second fight with Dustin Poirier, just from a I enjoy watching these human beings fight each other, it carries no real value to me going forward. We go forward to the welterweight division. Gunnar Nelson looks tremendous in making me look like a complete moron, dominating Brian Barberena, basically hanging out, taking a couple of kicks and being like, yeah, you know what? We're going to scoop you into the air, slam you on the ground, and then just get this thing done. Clinical, textbook, Gunny at his absolute best, doing Gunny things, reminding us how good he is on the ground and how wonderful a mustache he can grow.
Yeah, look, we talked about this on the preview show, right? And I think there is an element of this where Gunnar is again showing his flaw. Not his ceiling necessarily, but his floor. I think he shows his ceiling in the first minute and a half when he throws absolutely zero.
Yes.
And when he shoots for that right hand, that's his entry to the clinch. And look, don't get me wrong. I think everything on the ground was amazing. It was absolutely fantastic. No problem with it whatsoever. But it's the stuff in between then, right? Against Ponzinibbio, yes, okay, he got eye poked a number of times, and that absolutely was a big factor. But he was dragged into shots rather than wanting to set his shots in the same sort of stance that he uses. And I think equally, because those leg kicks are so readily available from that stance, better fighters with dominant leg kicks, fighters with more volume than Brian Barberena, added, because Brian Barberena is a volume fighter if he's going forward, less of a volume fighter if he's going back. And Gunnar Nelson's footwork is a difficult puzzle to solve, right? Brian Barberena has never been the guy that's had, a plus 60% takedown defense record, whatever it is, gets trucked by RDA, whatever. That's the fight, by the way. But like for me, when it hits the ground, this is Gunnar Nelson 101. If you are on the ground, it is about as perfect as you could expect it to go. He lands in half guard, does some things, tries to pass conventionally with some grappling, fails because Barberena is just punching him a little bit, tries to lock up Kimuras and Americanas for cross body control, gets his hook in, gets to mount. As soon as it's in mount, we're done, right? He hooks up, far side underhook, climbs the body, shoots to the near leg. Brian Barberena has absolutely no answer for the grip sets. Don't blame him. Gets armbarred. See you later. Thanks very much. The fight for me, and I'll just fucking launch in and say it, there's two names.
Okay.
One is if you want to see, and one is if you want to use Gunny to build.
Okay.
If you
want
to
see,
it's RDA. If not, give me Sean Brady.
So Sean Brady is out right now with a groin injury. He was supposed to fight Michelle Pereira.
We'll wait.
Coming up in a few months. Fair enough. I had a couple similar ideas here in the same vein of if you want to see and if you want to. The veteran pairing to me is Neil Magny.
I had Neil Magny's name down.
They were scheduled to fight a few years ago. It just feels like Neil Magny at least is still in the rankings. He's not 39 years old as RDA is. Get it. RDA is trying to make one last run. Both just trucked Brian Barberena. Let's go. Makes sense. Either of those guys makes sense. If we're doing do you want to build? Could I interest you in a Jack Della Maddalena?
Yes.
Because, so here was my thinking with it. One, Della 4-0, 4 first round finishes. Like, good Lord, this guy has looked great. But he's also had a couple little moments where we've just been like, somebody better than this is going to exploit that. And I'm thinking primarily about that Ramazan Ameev shit,
Yeah.
where he's just making bad decisions.
Yeah.
And if you make a bad decision and you play around a little bit, like Gunnar Nelson on the ground could be the fuck around and find out test
Yeah.
for Della.
Yeah, that's a great name.
And I think you could do it as the co-main somewhere, either in Australia, back in Europe at some point. If they go back to London in July, you could maybe even do it as the main.
No. Relax.
No, I mean, I think we go bigger than that, but if in a pinch.
Yeah, I like that.
So those are the thoughts I had.
Forget Sean Brady. You could sit out with your groin injury. You could sit there. That's fine. We'll do Maddalena or we'll do RDA. I'm happy with either of those.
Okay. I like those.
Yeah.
Solved. Jennifer Maia defeats Casey O'Neill, hands her first loss of her career. Unanimous decision, 30-27 and 29-28 twice. This to me was a fight where the veteran just showed, I still got a little bit more than you. I still understand this a little bit better. I can do things a little bit more. I'm a better athlete. She moved very well, remained on her horse, remained kind of forcing Casey O'Neill to chase her. Casey O'Neill had moments. There were moments throughout the fight where they just had exchanges and Casey O'Neill lands well, but it was never quite enough to really build that momentum. It's sort of, to me, like you were saying with the Usman fight where he would land well, and previously he lands and he goes forward and this is the swarm. This is the tidal wave crashing over. He didn't have that Saturday, and Casey O'Neill never had those moments. Jen Maia gets a good win. I don't think it changes anything for either of them. Jennifer Maia is who she is. This is specifically who she will be for the remainder of her career, provided she doesn't string together 4, 5, 6, 8 wins. And Casey O'Neill is 23 years old and coming back off a year away and just lost to a former title challenger. It's okay. She'll be fine.
I will peel back the fourth curtain and I will say, break the fourth wall, peel back the curtain all together in one.
Okay.
I didn't watch this. And I didn't watch this because I ran out of time.
Sorry for rushing you.
That's absolutely fine, no problem. But yes, I will not give any names because I feel like I can't give names if I didn't watch the fight. So you can go ahead and give names.
So I don't have anything offhand. I will pull up the rankings here because my computer is readily available as always. And like, it just to me is one of those, Jennifer Maia, Amanda Ribas. Give Amanda Ribas another test after beating Viviane Araujo. It's just sort of the next step up, And Casey O'Neill, I just want to see her have a little reset. Find me another veteran in that mix, in that somewhere. If we want to go timelines, Ariane Lipski just got a good win. Sure, do that. Joanne Wood just fought. Let's have an all Scotland battle. Let Casey O'Neill smash Joanne Wood. No, Scotland versus Scotland. We're out. Okay. To me, it's one of those. The next fight doesn't really matter for either of them. Just as it's going to be someone in the same neighborhood, and Casey O'Neill will continue to improve and get better. It also, to me, the one takeaway I have from it in terms of Casey O'Neill in the division is that it just reiterates how good Erin Blanchfield has looked, and how, like, good Lord, in the last year, she's just gone from where they're all sort of in that same pack. Casey O'Neill at the helm, Macy Barber, Erin Blanchfield, Miranda Maverick. And in the last year, Erin Blanchfield has just been like, you know what? I don't want to hang out with you guys anymore. I'm going to go sit over here. It happens. First fight of the main card, Marvin Vettori defeats Roman Dolidze by unanimous decision, 29-28 twice, 30-27 once, which is an egregious scorecard in my books. Roman Dolidze won at least the first round. This is the second of the couple fights on the main card that I'm going to rewatch this afternoon with comms off and just sort of sit and take in. Maybe record them as a podcast. We'll see. This was another one of those, like, all right, this is what middleweight is kind of fights. They're both good enough to be right up near the top of this division. Neither is good enough to beat those top two guys in Robert Whittaker and Israel Adesanya. And then we don't know about Alex Pereira because he's just this weird figure that has a title. This was a fun fight. It was a competitive fight. I liked what I saw from both guys. I liked that Marvin Vettori has made a point of improving and getting better and adding kicks to his game, which, you know, is crazy to say at 29 and 30 fights in, but hey, he went out and added a new piece to things. It's not just 1-2 and a ball of dust. Your thoughts?
The shade is unbelievable. Good Lord. I feel like a lunar eclipse has just happened above my house, the amount of shade. Solar eclipse, not a lunar eclipse. Look, I thought this was a close fight. As I watch it, I score it for Dolidze. I just think he hit a little bit harder. I think in the first round, the final 2 minutes of Dolidze, he really poured it on.
Agreed.
And did some really, really, really good damage in that first round. I have no problem scoring the second round to Vettori. It was a close round. I feel like Dolidze won the third. Again, the third was hard because it was basically 2.5 minutes for both guys. 2.5 minutes of the first 2.5 minutes of the fifth round, Vettori looked good, and then the second 2.5 minutes, Dolidze started to pour it on again. So I have no problem with Vettori winning. I have no problem with Dolidze winning. I personally scored it for Dolidze. But I think Dolidze has more of an upside. I really do. Like, I think that if he got rid of I take a shot and I'm going to take a moment now to stand there and beckon you on because you've just hit me bullshit, and instead of getting hit with it, slip out of the pocket and come back in with something. If we could do that a bit more, that would be great. I have no rhyme or reason of understanding as to why there was zero grappling other than a single clinch in the third round here. If you're Dolidze and you've just submitted Jack Hermansson, what the fuck are we doing? Just test it, right? Vettori has good takedown defense, has okay takedowns himself.
Fine. Make him work.
Make him try something, you fuck.
This was a fight to me where I had the voices and conversations I've had with coaches running through my head the whole time. You hit one, which is if you can stand there and beckon him on, or you can stand there and showboat or whatever, you can punch him in the face, which is a conversation I have pretty regularly with Sean Madden, great independent striking coach who's worked with Lauren Murphy and several others. The other is, as you said, as we always say, the Trevor Whitman thing of take 10, 20% off of things, Dolidze. Throw a little more volume with a little less power. Because you were landing, you were connecting, but everything is a great big hook that's got to come from a mile away, and it's got to be full max power. And so you're waiting for that energy bar to recharge. If you just throw halves, you can throw 2. If you throw 30%, you can throw 3. And then the other one is, wrestle. Just wrestle. Just make him work. Just get on his hips, grab a single, threaten a single, something. Make him think about it. Because Marvin Vettori is going to be happy to stand there the way he did, the way this fight went, where he's dictating the positioning essentially with his movement. He's making you chase. He's making you do the work of finding him. Just do a little bit of the grappling. Just say, okay, we're not running anymore. I'm going to grab this. You're going to carry my weight for a little bit. And I'm a great big burly bastard. Do more.
Yeah, I think in the same vein as with Fiziev and Gaethje, it's whatever because these pricks are never going to do MMA. But like, if it's Dolidze and Vettori, can we have an MMA fight, please? Like, can we have an MMA fight at all, if possible?
Right.
Like,
you just showed it against Jack Hermansson. That's the frustrating part, right? You just showed it against a guy that, to me, listen, Marvin Vettori beat Jack Hermansson and is higher ranked and all of those things. But Jack Hermansson is a more complete fighter. He has more tools that you have to worry about. And you went out there and you were like, great, you've got 3 tools. I've got 3 tools. My 3 are going to beat yours. Then you walked into a fight with Marvin Vettori and you were like, cool, you got one tool. I'm going to leave these other two at home and I'm just going to bring the hammer and we're just going to have a hammer fight. And Marvin Vettori is going to beat you in a hammer fight if your last name isn't Whitaker or Adesanya.
Or maybe Bahia.
Or maybe Paya.
But like,
and maybe not Delidze, but like it's going to be competitive in a way that if you brought the other tools, maybe it isn't.
Right. 100%. 100%.
Do we have names?
We have names for Delidze because I don't care about Vettori at this point.
Okay, Vettori fights Jared Cannonier. That's what we do.
Yeah,
they haven't fought each other yet. It's the middleweight division. We keep rebooking members of the top 5 against one another. He's not going to fight Sean Strickland because they're close and they like beating the hell out of each other in the gym. It's Jared Cannonier. Go ahead with Delidze.
So I have one that I would like to see, and then I have a really wild one.
Okay, I love these. I love this. This is wonderful development over the last few weeks.
The one I would like
to see. My favorite thing in the world right now.
It is Sean Strickland.
Yes.
Let me see that. Because if I'm Delidze, Sean Strickland is also going to throw power things, but is also going to do a little bit more volume. If it's not fighting for a title, he will do some grappling if he needs to. And that's fine. The other name I have that I don't mind seeing is Imavov. I would be happy to see Delidze and Imavov. I know that, they're both technically coming off losses and they're both doing things, and that's fine. I would have no problem in seeing that. The wild one, you want to do Bo Nickel versus Roman Delidze? You want to fuck it and find out? You want to do that? You want to bump him? If you want to bump him.
Oh, man.
If you want to bump him, you
Good
could.
Lord, that's not a bump. that's not a bump. Jamie
bump.
Pickett to Roman Delidze is not a bump.
But it's a bump off a real old big trampoline.
That is a gigantic trampoline.
Hear me out.
Okay.
You don't lose anything. Because what's going to happen is they're going to grapple. Right? Bo Nickel is going to try and run in there and grapple as quickly as possible. That's what we've seen. Delidze will likely oblige. And we're going to get to see ADCC Trials winner in Roman Delidze versus collegiate wrestling, fantastic grappler in their own right. That would be an interesting...
Olympic trials, yeah, all of those things. Yep.
For Delidze, and this is a wild thing to say, but for Delidze, we're going to see if he's a fucking idiot and just chooses to grapple, or whether he's going to try to deny the takedowns, keep it on the feet, and strike. And if he does, it could be a bloodbath, right? Fine, I'm accepting of that. But if not, we might see Bo Nickel do some things.
Bo Nickel instantly becomes the top 10 middleweight, and you're like, okay, all right.
This is what I mean, right? If you want to send him on a rocket ship,
this is the kind of thing you do if you want to send him on a rocket ship. I mean, if we're going to pick rocket ship names for Bo Nickel, it's Derek Brunson. You convince Derek Brunson to take that fight.
So rude.
I agree, but we just spent the first 48 minutes of this show talking about they don't care and just the next thing. Hey, Derek, here's what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
That contract of yours, we're going to double it. We know it's the last one, so we'll get you out of here on a high packet, and you're going to fight the kid. And Bo Nickel can go out there and be like, I can out wrestle this dude all day. I got to watch out for a left hand and a high kick, but if I can get on his legs right away, we're good.
Who do you have for Delidze?
So me for Delidze, I've got a couple options. I like Imavov because it's two potentially emerging guys in the division, and I would like to get one of them moving forward again. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't mind a Brendan Allen coming off a win, having some success, a little bit behind him in the rankings, confident, growing. I just don't want to, I'm trying to stay away from sameness. The struggle with Strickland is that they both train at Extreme. And so I don't know what the relationship is like. I don't know what the company policy is. And I will ask this question this week of like, hey, how do we feel about guys that train in the same facility and know each other a little bit, fighting each other? Because like there weren't Extreme guys in the corner for Roman Dolidze on Saturday. I believe he did most of his camp, as you would expect, in Georgia, being that the fight was in Europe.
Mhm.
But he trains at Extreme when he's in the States.
Okay. Right.
And so I will reach out to Eric Nixick later today to find out an answer to that. But yeah, any of those sorts of names, somebody in that, I mean, you could convince me that I guess Calvin Gastelum is fighting Chris Curtis already. So you could give me that one. I would have taken that too. But we move forward. It is the severe takeaways for UFC 286. Harry Powell, E. Spencer Kite. We get to the prelims. We will certainly go through these a little bit quicker than we have the main card. Jack Shore defeats Makwan Amarkhani by second round submission, rear naked choke. I'm torn with this one because I like Tank. Been a big supporter of old Tank Shore. And I like that he got a finish. I like that he got a win. I like that he's back in the win column. But this fight, to me, gave me the, is our boy ever going to struggle at featherweight? Because he got taken down and controlled on the ground in the first round when Makwan Amarkhani, who has that Brunson energy, that Brunson gas tank, where I got 5 minutes in me and I'm really good for 5 minutes. But after that, man, you could just come and get me. And that's what Jack Shore did, right? He made it through the first round. And then in the second was just like, this guy's tired. I can go and get him. And I just worry that as Jack Shore tries to progress up the ranks against some of these more athletic, more well-rounded, better gas tank individuals, he is going to struggle.
So I don't think I prescribe to him. He definitely got taken down, right? He certainly wasn't having it his own way on the ground. I don't think I would say controlled necessarily. There wasn't a ton of damage done by Makwan Amarkhani. He didn't progress the position drastically. He certainly wasn't looking like he was deep on any subs at any real point. But certainly it's not the round Jack Shore would have wanted.
He didn't get up.
He didn't get up.
He was happy. He seemed more happy on his back than I would like to see against a guy that, as you said, isn't doing damage, isn't progressing, isn't really hunting or close on anything. And so against these guys that are going to be doing all of those things that Amarkhani wasn't, I don't want you in that spot to begin with. Continue.
Now, comes out in the second. I thought it was going to be done in the front headlock when Makwan Amarkhani slips the kick because Makwan Amarkhani things. But it wasn't. Shore hits a really, really, really lovely takedown and then just melts him. Absolutely melts him. Passes with absolute ease, immediately from side control to mount with ease, forces him to give his back, sinks the choke in transition. Perfect finish. Essentially
lovely.
Perfect.
Yep, lovely.
Now
changes up his grip, gets to the right, set up, whole 9 yards, we're done. Great.
I agree with you that we have a big problem here for Jack Shore. And that problem is he mentioned that the lack of athleticism at 135 is one of the reasons why he moved up. He didn't say it was because of a weight cut. He said it was because he personally didn't feel as athletic or as strong as he does when he's out of camp walking around at what we can imagine to be roughly 145 pounds. It'll be heavier than that, but he won't be so far away from 145
right.
pounds.
Correct.
He may be 155, he may be 158, something like that, but it's not going to be drastic in comparison. My fear is if you go searching in that 145-pound division at anyone with a rank against their name, it's tough. If you then go looking outside that top 15 to the outside top 15, the top 30, there are some absolutely beatable names in there for Jack Shore, without a shadow of a doubt. But there's not enough to make a run at a title.
Right.
And so the really interesting takeaway for me on this here severe takeaways is, what does Jack Shore do now? Does he say to himself, okay, I'm going to take 9 months, 12 months, and I'm going to go back to 135. and I'm going to look to change my physique, and I'm going to look to invest heavily into changing my physique to be more muscle-based, and obviously still work to keep my cardio, because that's one of the great things about his game.
Right. Certainly.
And do I work on becoming more of an athlete? Now, that's difficult enough at the age he is, right? It's not something you can just say, oh, yeah, sure, I'll take a year out of my career and go and put some muscle on. Grand. But I wonder whether for the longevity of his career, it would benefit him to do that. Because I have a name, and that name is not ranked. That name is Nathaniel Wood.
Give the Cage Warriors fans their moment.
I know, and we'll talk about Lerone Murphy shortly, but I know that Nathaniel and Lerone have been chirping at each other now, back and forth, whatever. But it all just doesn't seem real to me. It feels like both of them have got a bit of petty playground, whatever. I talked to Lerone, and Lerone said, there's absolutely nothing personal here with me. I just saw that he said something, so I responded. I don't usually respond, but this one just kind of got me, and that's fine, whatever. Fine. I, as a Cage Warriors fan, as somebody that's been following the regional scene, was desperate for this fight for a long old time. And for the right reasons, we didn't see it in Cage Warriors, because you didn't really want to be taking the shine off either guy in that regional promotion.
Right.
Now's the time. Let me see it. Yeah. If you want to do Nathaniel Wood, Jack Shaw as the third fight on a main card, or even a co-main event or whatever, sign me the fuck up. I am here for it. Give me, personally, just me, the fight I wanted in Cage Warriors. That's the fight.
Yeah, I'm not even going to counter with anything else, because yes. Simple. Yes. Because Nathaniel Wood presents some of those problems that we're talking about, right? He's done the same thing. He's moved up because the weight cuts were trash on him. He's looked very good through 2 fights. He is a step ahead of Jack Shore in this division, even if you just go 2 wins versus 1 win. I mean, Nathaniel Wood's wins are quality as well. And so, done. Sean, Mick, here you go. Please enjoy the show. Here you are. Chris Duncan beats Omar Morales by split decision. Listen, Chris Duncan, I said going in, can he be more than an action fighter? The answer is yes. He can be I need to be a wrestler fighter. Neither of those are going to produce long-term success for Chris Duncan in the UFC. And Omar Morales, I don't know what's happened over the last whatever, but he started out looking really good in the UFC and then randomly was like, I'm going to go to featherweight. That didn't work out very well. He's back to lightweight, and now it's like, he just doesn't throw enough. He kind of throws one shot every minute and then gets into these fights. It is what it is. Away we go. Yanela Schmooze sent Sam Patterson so far into the shadow realm that when Sam Patterson got back up eventually, blood dripping down his face, completely unaware of where he is, he was either A, trying to fight Mark Goddard in the clinch, thinking it was, I'm still in a fight, or B, was so mad and in disbelief that the fight was actually done that he didn't understand why Mark Goddard was in his face. That, my friends, is proof that you got knocked the fuck out.
Yeah, this was a sad one. It's a sad one because Sam Patterson is a guy that took the long road and took the hard road and now managed to get to the UFC. And he's got this intrigue because, you know, he's 6'5" or whatever he is, absolutely gigantic frame for the division. It looks like he's fighting his younger brother's younger brother. And, you know, he comes in and there's basically absolutely nothing that happens until he gets
Kalamo.
It was wild. Ashmoz comes in and is like, how the fuck do I get in on this Goliath dude? And for 1 minute and 14 seconds, nothing happens. At the 1 minute and 15th mark, he hits him with a big overhand right. And because Sam is so big, he manages to clatter him with an overhand left before he hits the ground. And when he hits the ground, I had no need for those coffin nails. None.
Oh
Zero.
God. Yeah. I was going to correct you. For 1 minute and 14 seconds, nothing happens. For about a minute, nothing happens. Then he hits them with the 2-piece, 1 as he's upright, 2 as he's at a 45-degree angle. And then we get to the ground and he beats the Christ out of him in about 5 seconds. That went on for 4 seconds, way too long. And yeah. I said it in the moment on Saturday. Mark Goddard is still the gold standard in this sport in terms of officiating. I'm sure if you asked Mark, hey, did you watch that one back? Were you a little late? He would say, yeah, I was late. And listen, some of that I don't know, but is some of that maybe that there's a little bit of a, Sam Patterson and how tough he is and you've done some of his fights and you've seen him come back and stuff like that. Maybe. I'm sure there's those little hangover moments for officials. He took too much. Muted.
Apologies. I don't think this was the case with Mr. Goddard and Sam on this one. I just think the way that Sam fell and the angle with which he fell at was awkward, and he kind of tried to get his hands.
He's trying to grab. He's trying to, yeah.
He's trying something, but obviously there's a moment where this becomes just a bit egregious. And yeah, Sam is trying to play half guard with Mark Goddard as he comes to. He has a grapevine hook and he has a knee shield, and he's looking at Mark in his face as if he's fighting him, and right. Mark's so gently being like, sir, this is
Sam, it's Mark. Yeah, it's Mark.
It's not. This is
like he said it to him in the corner still when they got up, and Sam was still trying to like move around and get off of him, and he was like, "It's Mark, it's Mark, it's Mark," and Sam was still just like, "I don't know who Mark. I don't know who Mark is, but I'm gonna fight him too." Nope.
Yeah. No. Super crazy.
I have no idea where Yanel Ishmael goes from here. I don't know what his ceiling is. My thing going into this was, what do we got with either of these guys?
Yep.
So what I know right now is that Yanel Ishmael has some serious ass power that I look forward to seeing again against someone else that is 1-0 in the UFC or 2-0 in the UFC. And look, if they can find somebody else that's 5'3" for him to try to chop down, 5'3", somebody else that's 6'3" for him to try to chop down, certainly happy to see him be Paul Bunyan.
So when the only thing I'll say for Sam Patterson in my notes here for his next one is when I looked at this, honestly, I just said, why is this guy not fighting at 170? Because he looked slow at 155. He looked labored at 155, and you don't want that. Like 155ers are neither slow nor labored.
You will be back in UAE Warriors real quick and Brave real quick if you're hanging out at 55 slowly.
Yeah, so I think 170 might be the move for Sam Patterson. But yeah, go on. We move on.
Muhammad Mokaev gets a 3rd-round submission win over Defel Filo in a fight where he looked nowhere near the guy that we expected him to be this fight, that we've expected him to be throughout. He navigated a knee bar in the 3rd round that I genuinely almost vomited watching it because of the inflection of his leg, and then wrestles up and gets a choke. And so like at a certain point you're like, well, not a choke and neck crank or a mandible strangle, as you're going to tell me it properly was. What do we do? Where are you at with Muhammad Mokaev after this fight? What are your thoughts on this performance?
So we talked about this a little bit last night, right? And I think that's not helpful for any of the listeners because obviously they don't watch our WhatsApp conversations. But
that's why I didn't mention it.
Yes. So one of the things I think we have here, and something that in hindsight is much easier to talk about than it is when we're all, excited about Mokaev and his skills and his run and whatever, is that there is a 22-year-old kid here that is fighting and is, imagine yourself at 22 when you realized you were good at something and you were on a racetrack and whatever, and you're on this massive upward trajectory in your career and everything's behind you and you feel invincible and you do all this stuff. I can totally understand for Makayev why he jumps on his own bandwagon of saying, yeah, I'm going to beat John Jones's record. I'm going to have the title at 22. I'm going to have the this. I'm going to have the that. I'm going to do the next thing. I understand. But we know that he has been dealing with some injuries. We, I think, could see that in this fight. He looked far more tentative than he has previously. He looks far, not slower. I don't think slower is the word. I just think more measured, less fluid in his
everything was thought out more.
Yeah. And then there was kind of a moment in the first when it clearly wasn't going his way on the feet. And then he's like, oh, okay, I'll just grapple, I guess. And then grapple, took your man's back really quick. Wasn't able to sink in chokes. Fiallo turns in and starts to look okay. And Makayev's like, oh, fuck, okay, he's not going to accept the positions, fine. Round 2, nothing happens, basically.
Right. Yep.
And I just want to talk through that knee bar a little, right? Okay. Because what I found very enjoyable was the setup. A very unorthodox setup to go from having your back taken to finding a knee bar. But just sort of the mechanics of what the knee bar was and the way that Fiallo maybe could have finished it. So the setup was Fiallo manages to go 2-on-1 on Makayev's arm, takes his arm over to the other side so he can start to escape. As he turns in, he uses the flexibility and the dexterity of his hips to sort of sit to, like, I don't know what the yoga position is, but there's yoga's position where you manage to drop one knee to the ground as the other one raises and the other and vice versa. And he manages to do that as he turns into Makayev. He takes an underhook of Makayev's far leg because he knows that Makayev is going to have to base out in front of him. So that leg's going to be light. He uses that underhooking leg to invert underneath Makayev. And as Makayev steps up to then get some balance and get some base with that leg, he's already collecting it between his two legs and pulling on the knee bar. Now, the type of knee bar that he looked for at the very beginning, he wasn't on. It was absolutely not on. There was a moment when the camera angle pans and Fiallo is hitting what's called a lateral knee bar. A lateral knee bar is when you're pressing through the side of the knee rather than what we saw when it looks egregious when the knee is bending and the knee is coming through the other side of the leg. That's what we would call a conventional knee bar, right? So Fiallo is going for what's called tombstone grips. Tombstone grips is when you go palm over palm, cross gripping on the toes and cross gripping on the heel, and then obviously driving and hipping into the knee. The hipping into the knee is accentuated by the hamstring curl that Fiallo's legs had around sort of Makayev's thigh, butt, and lower back. That creates a lot of pressure through the knee. Now, Makayev was defending not fantastically well because he wasn't able to pick his hips up to take some of the pressure off the knee bar. But what he was trying to do is take his secondary leg and start poking at the grips of Fiallo. If he pokes at the grips, there will be a time where he can start to rotate his knee back to a lateral knee bar, or at least back to somewhere where the pressure is taken off the base of the kneecap. Now, if I was coaching a grappler through this in a grappling tournament, what I would have told them to do is pass the knee, pass the foot, and pass the shin off from center chest to the far armpit, to the far lat. And then you can hit what's called a lat knee bar, where you drape your own elbow over the back of the calf and you can pull your whole back through the knee bar as well as your hips. Now, if that had occurred, I have absolutely no doubt that he would have broken Makayev's leg because Makayev was dead to rights. He wasn't being able to fight the hands successfully. And Fiallo just got flustered and let go. There wasn't anything that happened here that Makayev did that really forced Fiallo, other than Makayev being super deadpan, looking up at Herb Dean and being like, there's nothing here. Don't worry about it. Don't look at my leg. There's no problem with it. It's fine.
Ignore the fact that this thing that should at most be straight is now at an improper angle.
Right. Don't worry about it.
I'm telling you we're fine.
Now, there are people that have extremely dexterous legs that can take some knee bar pressure.
Sure.
That level of knee bar pressure, because the reason why I know he took damage isn't even necessarily from the bend of his leg. But if you watch the way he retracts his leg, the knee is facing up and his thigh is facing the other way. Legs don't do that, right? So from that point, I'm like, okay, he's taken damage. He then manages to wrestle up, finds the back, and it's neither, it's not a mandible strangle this time. It's just a jaw crank. Like, that's all it is here. It's just a jaw
pain.
Crank. It's just pain. Because when you're having a mandible strangle, generally the chin is facing forward and you're driving the jaw back and through.
Off to the side.
Makayev had just dragged his jaw to the side and was just cranking on it. Like, I am shocked that Fialho tapped to that, because his hands were available to hand fight. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to suck. I'm not saying it's not going to hurt, but right. I would have had no problem scoring the second round for Fialho.
Right.
That knee bar.
If you fight that, you might be winning that fight.
You might be winning that fight, my friend. And so I am shocked that he didn't fight for it. It does hurt. I've been in there many a time, and I've tapped to them many a time. But if I'm in an MMA fight fighting Muhammad Makayev on my UFC debut,
and I've got 28 seconds left,
I might just chew that a little bit, you know? I might just bite down on that fucking mouthpiece.
I'm sure he's kicking himself.
And I might just tuck my chin inside, and I might just find a way to grit it out.
I'm sure he's kicking himself.
Right. Now, that's not to say that with those face cranks, what happens a lot is people lift their chin up, and then it gets under the neck, and now we've got big problems.
Right.
But there are ways and means. Now, you asked me, where are we? Well, where we are is Makayev is going to need a bit of time away. And Makayev shows the heart and the desire that he has to win by taking that damage. And you also know how damaged he was when he got up from finishing that choke. He couldn't stand and managed to like haul himself up to the top and then was carried back down. So we know that there is some significant damage that's happened there. I just think we need to remember that he's 22 years of age and he's in a position that not many people are in and has been facilitated by us because we are so excited by his skill set. And I just think we just take some time here.
Yeah. Get the shoulder surgery that was recommended for you post the last fight. Deal with whatever the knee is, which may be surgery as well. Take the time. I know you have ambitions of beating John Jones's record. You told me here on this platform. Just take the time, man. Just go and figure it out now for the next however long it takes. You're 22. There's plenty of time. I think ultimately, as weird as this will sound, getting stuck in that spot where now he's not really going to have a choice but to go under the knife is the best thing that could have happened for him. And like surgery certainly has its risks and maybe you never come back 100%, whatever. We don't know that future, but take the time, go get better. The thing we talked about yesterday that we'll let people in on is sort of the way that expectations and the way that we let ourselves get hyped and into some of these athletes and then expect them to just not hit a point where this kind of fight comes up, where the 22-year-old struggles a little bit with the 29-year-old. That's a little better than he expected him to be. That has a little more to offer than I think he expected. And we as pundits, as observers, even just as fans, have to remember to allow for that. Have to remember that, as I said many a times before, we've got two champions that are under the age of 30, and they're both 29. They both turned 30 this year. And they've both been around for a long, long time already. Like, it's not like they're 29 and only started, 4 years ago. No, it takes time. It takes progression. We gotta at times slow ourselves a little. And I think this outcome and being forced to the sidelines will certainly allow Muhammad Makayev to go at a slower pace when he comes back.
For sure.
Move on to the rest of the prelims. Lerone Murphy defeats Gabriel Santos by split decision.
I do have a name.
Oh. See, and I thought maybe because we anticipated a year away, there wouldn't be one. Go on.
So, We've anticipated a year away.
Okay.
I don't know whether he's going to do that or not, right?
Okay.
If he doesn't, I wanted to have a name just in case.
Okay.
The name just in case is Matt Schnell.
I'll take it. I'll take it. It's another step forward. It's a guy that's in the top 10. It's a guy that's beatable in the top 10. Come in and do some of the wild stuff, can grapple a little, can engage you, will force you to fight in a bit of a sloppy, messy, if he can drag you into it. I'll take it. I like it. I hope he takes the year. I hope he gets all of the surgeries that are needed and just sorts it out. Because I want to see, I think I actually like him toughing out that knee bar, him going through that and being like, well, I'm just going to have to give up these ligaments, gives me the like, oh my God, this guy. If you can just get the rest of this sorted and take some of the time, 27-year-old you is going to be my favorite fighter. So just take the time. As I said, Lerone Murphy gets a split decision win over Gabriel Santos. This to me was just one of those fights that it's really hard to assess Lerone Murphy coming out of this because one, he's off for over a year. Two, it's a short notice replacement fighter who is significantly better than people understand. He showed that on Saturday. I think I tweeted out one of the few tweets I had through the event was that Gabriel Santos just is showing that he belongs at this level, very much so. I just want to see Lerone Murphy like not spend the next 6 to 8 months on the sidelines. He's unbeaten. He's got 4 straight wins in the UFC, five fight unbeaten streak in the UFC. Just get him back in there quickly. Who should it be?
If he wants to do July, how about Mark Diakese?
Hold, please.
I'll just give my reason.
Go ahead.
Fellow English fighter. If they're going to do a July card, they're going to need good fights.
They're in different divisions.
Oh, Diakese's 170.
No, he's 155. Lerone Murphy fights at 45.
Fuck. That's
also Mark Diakese's coming off a loss.
Yeah, that's fine though. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter.
It does to me.
Yeah, to you it does. To everyone else, it does not. To the fans watching, it doesn't. Okay, fuck, 145. Who can we go with?
I mean, the Nathaniel Wood fight is there. Right?
Yeah.
I know we've booked Jack Shore, but that's sitting there.
What about Danny Ige?
Yeah, I mean, that's the fight I want to see.
Okay, good. Thanks.
That's the fight I want to see. It's a step up. It's a ranked guy, which I think he's in a position that you've got to just, he's 31. He turns 32 in the summer. You've got to see how good this is. Is this a guy that can progress into the top 10? Or is this a guy that is a lower third of the top 15 or just going to live in that second 15? You got to find out. You could do it as a co-main event. Danny Ige as headline events. That's the name to me. That makes the most sense. Christian Leroy Duncan makes his debut, gets a first round TKO stoppage win over Duško Todorovic, who suffers a knee injury about 2 minutes in. Again, hard to make any real assessments. We didn't see a lot. I think the world of CLD as a prospect, as we talked about on the show. I'm trying to temper my expectations. Yourself and Sean are all the way aboard the rocket ship. It's unfortunate that this went the way it did. My hope is that within 3 to 4 months, we see Christian Leroy Duncan again.
I could go Bo Nickel here too.
Nah, you don't do that. Don't, keep them away from each other.
Or the other option and the more sensible option was Punahele Soriano.
Yeah, I would do that.
Because I think one thing that Christian Leroy Duncan does really well, or what we've seen him do really well in Cage Warriors, is when guys are aggressive and they come towards him, he's able to land really, really, really well. Punahele Soriano, if he catches you, you might go night-night, right? And if Christian Leroy Duncan, we're going to find out, right? Punahele Soriano has had a number of fights in the UFC. I think it's 5 or something like that. So quite clearly in the middleweight division, he's that guy in and around that top 50, maybe top 30 if there's even 50 fighters in the middleweight division. But really, Punahele Soriano is the same level as a Duško Todorovic. And
Yes.
Freak accident for Todorovic. Feel awful for him, really, because it was shaping up in that first minute and so to be an interesting fight. Neither one was.
I just wanted to see what happened out of that clinch. That was going to be the moment of like, oh, he's actually doing the thing that he should do. He should wrestle. He should clinch. It looks like he's going to try to body lock, take him down. Maybe sacrifice throw him here. And his knee just is like, yeah, we can't handle this pressure. I got to do this thing where I just go,
yeah, wild, super wild. Feel horrendous.
I like the Puna shot. I like that. That's a good call. He's coming off a loss, but he's got a couple wins under his belt in the UFC. As you said, the big power, can wrestle a little bit when he needs to. Good matchup. I like it. Let's do it. Next up, the man who is in your spotlight this week, Mr. Jake Hadley. I was going to say, you got to at least give me the Jake Hadley, who goes out, and it's as if Jake Hadley tuned into one question this week and was like, that ESK guy, he's got some ideas here. What I should do is go out and truck Malcolm Gordon and then get on the mic and just drop this name real quick of like, took that other fella 3 rounds to get through this bum. I got him out of here in 61 seconds. And good God, was it lovely. Go on then. Tell me why.
So I wrote there were 3 overarching concepts that screamed at me in 61 seconds. The first was confidence. Jake Hadley has not had the easiest run, the most smooth run to get to this point, right? Does really well in Cage Warriors, looks like an absolute world beater in Cage Warriors, looks fantastic in Cage Warriors. Comes out, does the Contender Series, has that whole debacle, and we won't scratch over that again, but the Contender Series doesn't go as smoothly as he would like it to go, right? Gets into the UFC proper. Who does he fight? Alan fucking Nascimento, who is no slouch whatsoever.
Yeah, here's a 31-year-old that's good at the exact same thing you're best at.
Right. So, he loses to Alan Nascimento, not the best start to your UFC career. Goes out, has a war with Candelario completely unnecessarily for a round, and then comes out and manages to find himself a triangle. Fine. At this time, the people that are watching Cage Warriors or have watched him in Cage Warriors are questioning, where the fuck did that guy go? And who's this dude? Right? And so for him to come out with the level of confidence that he came out with and put on a performance of 61 seconds like he did was unbelievable. The second point I was so enamored by was the will to dominate, the necessity to dominate. He stood so wide in his stance and he chased Malcolm Gordon around that octagon. He didn't give a fuck about any leg kicks, any shots that were coming, and any time Malcolm Gordon looked to land a small jab, a smattering of an offering of something, Jake either shook his head, bit him down, or just landed something back. And Jake showed that left body shot about 8 seconds before the actual finish. Malcolm steps in, Jake steps out, Malcolm comes with the right hand, Jake comes with his own right hand, slips underneath the left hook of Gordon and lands a body shot. And even that one caused Gordon to wince just a touch. There was a little lean over.
He tucks the arm in a little bit.
A little lean over and a little arm tuck. And Jake then, that's the thing. He then's like, got him. Yeah. I know what it is. I just need to find it again. And so he hunts him and he fucking hunts him and he hunts him and he hunts him for 8 seconds. Gordon throws again. Same thing. Jake's like, cheers, boyo. Here it is.
Well, and you know that he missed weight. You know that taxes your body. That taxes those organs that are on that side of the body. And we heard in the walkout, and certainly Jake Hadley didn't necessarily hear this, but we heard in the walkout that Malcolm Gordon was having liver and kidney issues. In the preamble to this fight, and certainly a weight cut where you miss by a considerable margin isn't going to help any of that. And he was just like, grand. Here's 2. And 1 more to put you down and we're done.
And the third thing that shocked me was the precision. Jake Hadley has some things to work on and showed us in that. He was a little bit overzealous, a little bit overeager in some of those shots. Chased a little bit too hard at times. Should have just cut the cage off a little bit better. But fuck me, was he precise. He landed that left hand and then did it exactly the same 8 seconds later. To have that killer instinct, to be able to sniff a shot like that and land it twice in quick succession is very, very, very impressive. But I think the reason I chose him for Spotlight more than anything else is to come from that turbulent, really difficult up and down type situation to just come out and be like, fuck this. I'm at home. Let me truck this dude, who, by the way, is a pretty good fighter.
Yes.
Impressive. Super impressive.
Who does he fight next?
I have 2 names. The first one is Bruno Silva.
I like it.
If they don't do the Bruno Silva fight and they want to slow the roll just a touch, how about Jimmy Flick?
See, I would even say Charles Johnson, who beat Jimmy Flick.
Fine, but like, to me, Charles Johnson is another one who's like actually a really good fighter.
Yeah, and he's got something booked. I know that to be, but yeah, somewhere. I know you just said previously that no one cares except me. I don't want to see Jake Hadley come off a 61-second bludgeoning of a very good fighter, or a good fighter, a guy that has thrived on the regional circuit and just isn't UFC level to the level of Jake Hadley. I don't want to see him go from that to facing a guy that just got beat in the first round by Charles Johnson.
Well, let me
give him somebody going forward. That's why I love the Bruno Silva. Love it.
My rationale,
take all of it,
for Jimmy Flick is that let's just settle him in now.
Yeah.
Really tough debut, right?
Yep.
He's then had an okay performance against Carlos Candelario. Now he comes in, flatlines Gordon, fine. Now let's just give him not a layup, right? But let's give him a settling fight. Jimmy Flick doesn't do anything as well as Jake Hadley does, but has a gas tank, can go a bit, loves to scramble, no problem with any of those. And if you want to, that's the type of fight that just allows him to really settle in, comes across, gets another big win, and now we can go off to the races.
So in that regard, I will put forward any of the men that win flyweight fights this coming Saturday at the low end of things. So Victor Altamirano, Vinicius Salvador, they face each other. CJ Vergara and your guy, Daniel Mojito Lacerda, they fight each other. Winner of those, somewhere in that same idea of settle them. I agree. I like it. Joanne Wood beat Luana Carolina, and I don't care. That's it. JoJo's 37. The ship sailed.
Thanks very much for your career, JoJo. It was an
love you.
Pleasure.
It's still a joy to hear you get on the mic, and I expect gravel and anger and all of those things. Oh, she kicked me in the balls a couple of times. It's still lovely. It still makes me smile every time, but yeah. Jai Herbert and Ludovic Klein battle to a majority draw. I mean, it just is, right? It's kind of unfortunate. I think the very difficult road that Jai Herbert got handed initially upon reaching the UFC has made the upside that he carried disappear. I think this is just where he is now. This is just who he is now. There will be matchups where he's okay. There will be matchups where there's struggle. I know this probably should have been a win because the point deduction was a little bit balmy. It still wasn't man, did you see Jai Herbert? And I think there's a lot of people that are waiting for, man, did you see Jai Herbert?
I don't know. Age is a big problem here.
Yes.
Age is a big problem here. But Ludovic Klein's not a bad fighter.
No, I agree.
But
I mean, it's sort of the inverse of the Makayev thing, right? Where at 22, we're like, get him in against all the best guys. Jai Herbert's 34. He struggled against Kyle Nelson.
I get that. Ludwig Klein's not a bad fighter, and Jai Herbert was way better than Ludwig Klein. Yes, okay, he grabs him and like knees his balls and does the things and gets a point taken, fine. But there were moments in that fight, and there are things that Jai Herbert does. The way he played guard when he was on bottom.
He looked amazing in that first round off his back. Terrific. Sorry to interrupt you.
When he's on his feet and he gets into a rhythm, he's great. Like, yes, we know the ceiling because the technical advancements aren't going to be swift now, right? They're not. That's fine. They're not. He's 34. I do think he can still do some interesting things in this division. I still think we can have fun with Jai Herbert, and that leads me to my name.
I was just going to say, give me your name so we can discuss this part.
Again, I have one I would like to see and one that I think they could do.
Okay.
I'd like to see Paddy the Baddy Pimlet versus Jai Herbert. Let's do that.
Okay, fine. Yep, sure.
The name, I don't think they do that, by the way.
But no. like no, they don't. Like, they're not risking Paddy against anyone of any kind of usefulness. So they're just not. This is what's going to happen, unfortunately.
I wouldn't mind, and I should have known this because I'd already picked him. I don't mind Mark Diakese for Jai Herbert, and I don't mind Alexander Hernandez.
Yeah, I'm fine with either of those. If the Diakese that fought Michael Johnson turns up, then Jai Herbert can beat that dude 100%. Use his length, use his range. Certainly. And if the Alex Hernandez that has shown at times that he's got 5 minutes and then he's hittable again, but Alex Hernandez could 100% send Jai Herbert to the shadow realm.
And that's why it's intriguing to me.
Yep.
Hernandez
I do think that's the ceiling though.
Maybe, but we're only going to find out if he beats him. If he goes out and beats Mark Diakese, I don't think he stops Mark Diakese, but if he goes out and he unanimous decision defeats Mark Diakese, grand, no problem. We push him a little bit more, right? If he goes out and he could stop Alexander Hernandez because, he's got no gas after a round. But if that happens, fine. And if he goes and beats Alexander Hernandez, fine. We've got another one. Let's see a push-up. But we're only going to find out because the Ludwig Klein draw, whatever it is, what it is. He needs a something springboard to then say he's 34. Fuck it. Let's just find out.
Yeah.
Put him in there with whoever.
Yeah, he needs a big enough test next time out that if he wins and looks good, it creates that, okay, put him in there with somebody that's at 18 to 25. I hear you. Opening fight of the night, Veronica Hardy looks pretty good.
Really?
Against Juliana Miller. Unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. I got this one all the way wrong because I didn't think we would see these kinds of improvements, this kind of developmental understanding of things, because before she was Veronica Hardy and was Veronica Macedo, she just made mistakes all the time and ran onto things and couldn't figure out what weight class to be in. And admittedly, again, in hindsight, was a 22, 23, 24-year-old kid that just needed to take some time to figure out how to be a better fighter at what she does. And she did that. And she looked great.
I was really impressed. I wrote a lot of notes for this one, actually. I was really, really impressed. She managed the range really well. Miller was doing an okay job of using her range to land some ones and some twos. But Hardy did a great job of finding her leg kicks, of chopping away. Every time Miller tried to commit the cardinal sin in the first 2 rounds of pulling her hips underneath her, Hardy rode that takedown really, really, really well, managed to get to her top positions, and did good work. She was talking in the pre-fight about how Miller is somebody that has really good grappling and really good submissions until you hit her. And then when you hit her, she freezes a little and she looks like a bit of a deer in the headlights and she doesn't really know what's going on and doesn't really like it. And, then there's opportunities for you. So she's like, I'll just punch her when we grapple and then we'll see what happens. I was very impressed with her armbar defense. She did all of the right things the first time, stacked Miller up, reinforced with her knee, kept her frames right, shoved her head in, got to good positions, and defended really nicely. She followed the hips really nicely for the second armbar. She was doing all of the right things and showed yet again, MMA grappling is far superior to straight submission-based grappling. And when she got to those solid positions, she looked really good, looked solid, and talked afterwards about having cheat code Dan Hardy in the corner. I can believe it. I can absolutely believe it.
100%.
And, she said when there were things that he couldn't show me himself physically, he'd just point me to the right fight and the right timestamp. And there I was watching it. And it's like having cheat codes to the game. And I can absolutely, absolutely believe it.
Right.
Do I think Veronica Hardy wins a title? No. Do I think we can have a name next to her, a number next to her name? Maybe. And the fight for me, again, this is a settler. I want to see her settle in and see where we go. It's Teresa Blader.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'll take that. I'll take a big, strong judo-based grappler that can take some shots, that can throw some, is happy to get hit, and understands. Listen, this is what comes with the territory. I'm going to get punched in the face, and then I keep coming forward.
The storylines here for me between the fighters are, if I'm Teresa Blader, I go out and I watch her fight, and I'm like, oh, she nearly got armbarred twice? Cool.
Right.
No problem.
Right. I can get to better positions while taking less damage and make the most of this.
If I'm Veronica Hardy, I go out and I look at Teresa Blader, and you're like, she's a punch bag that walks forward. Awesome.
Natalia Silva kicked the hell out of her, and I have the same Taekwondo background.
Right. And
Love
so
it.
I like that fight.
Harry Powell Matchmaker has truly become my favorite development of 2023. This has been my favorite episode to date. We went nearly 2 hours, so thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging out with us. We greatly appreciate it. Follow him at BJJ_Harry Powell. Follow me at Spencer Kite. Follow all the lads. Sign up for the Patreon, SevereMMA.com/pints. We love you. We appreciate you. We will be back on this channel throughout the week, previewing UFC San Antonio, Chito Vera, and Corey Sandhagen. But for now, we bid you adieu.